Welcome to Navigating Consumer and Family Law Challenges. Insights from SoCal's trusted attorneys.
Welcome to Navigating Consumer and Family Law Challenges, Insights from SoCal's trusted attorneys with Sara Khosroabadi. With a focus on family law, consumer protection, and employment law, Sara offers helpful, caring, and professional legal services and advice. I'm your host, John Clements, and today's episode is Identity Crisis, Understanding and Combating Theft in Today's Digital Age. So Sara, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's dig into some questions. First one I have for you is, can you just explain to us the various forms of identity theft and how they might impact individuals differently?
Yeah, absolutely. So identity theft is kind of a broad issue, but typically what happens is somebody either steals your identity and is taking your social security information, maybe your driver's license information, and or your banking information, and using that for their own purposes. So when you talk about various forms of identity theft, somebody could steal just the credit cards that you already have, the information for the credit cards that you already have, and utilize those credit cards for their own purposes. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll actually open up new credit cards or new loans or new accounts under your name that you never had or never knew of. That's another form of identity theft. What I've seen is also somebody will use your social security number and start a job. And then now you've got taxes that you didn't know you were paying to the government for somebody else who's doing a job somewhere else. And then lastly, the one I could think of is driver's license as well. I've had a couple clients call and say, somebody got into an accident or they have so many parking tickets, but my driver's license got suspended and I don't even live in that, county or city or whatever it is. So
Yeah, that's interesting because I guess I think about, when I think about identity theft, oh, they stole my social security number or my credit card number. I didn't think about, and they're working a job and I owe taxes for them, or they've got my driver's license. So with that, I'm sure I'm not the only person who doesn't just readily have a list in their head, and so when you don't know the information, it comes with misconceptions about what it is. So what are some common misconceptions people might have about identity theft?
So a few of them are that they potentially owe the debt that has been accrued from this theft. That's not true. There's a lot of there's state law and federal law that actually help victims of identity theft try to kind of get their lives back. One of the statutes is actually the California identity theft statute. It helps with if somebody has opened up a credit card in your name, an account in your name, or used your credit cards, you have the ability to go to the bank and say, this is my information. Here is an identity theft affidavit that I'm attesting I am a victim. Please look into it. Please do your due diligence and make sure that you are looking into this to make sure that I don't have to pay this debt. So a lot of the other misconceptions are that you can sue. Well, I guess you could sue the person who's stealing your identity, but it's not usually very helpful because that person, you either can't find them, they've got your information off of the dark web, they're in some place like Florida, the Bahamas, wherever else that they can be. You don't know where they are. So sometimes I get clients who call me and say, I want to sue them directly. And that's not necessarily the easiest or the best route to go by. The other thing is a lot of people think like it's on my credit report and I can't do anything about it. I don't know what to do. I can't fix this. But again, there are statutes out there federally and in California that allow you to combat the identity theft issues. It's so prevalent that we've now got laws in place to protect people. But one of them is like the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So if there is something on your credit report that's inaccurate, you actually can go to the credit bureaus and to the banks and say, hey, this isn't my account. Please take it off my credit report. And then they have to do an investigation. And if they don't do that investigation properly, then you could potentially file a lawsuit and get it taken care of that way.
Oh, that's good to know. I know when I've had issues like with my own accounts, my bank is really good about taking care of it. And I kind of don't know the back end. I kind of don't want to know, but it's good to know that there are laws in place to protect all of us really as consumers.
Right.
Now, you work with these cases a lot, and so I'm sure you have some really crazy stories. So what are some of the most, surprising cases you've encountered?
Yeah, we just had a recent one where one of our clients actually contacted the bank ahead of time and said, "Hey, I got a letter saying that I'm a victim of identity theft and I want to get ahead of it and take control of this and make sure that they can't do much damage. Please close my accounts." The bank didn't close the accounts, even though they said that they did, and it ended up on her credit report a few months later, and that's definitely snowballed and created a lot of problems for her. So we were able to file a lawsuit. We're actually in the middle of arbitration right now, trying to get that fixed for her. But that was one of them. I've had a couple where it just gets crazier and crazier. We had about $7,500 in Uber Eats that were delivered or not delivered. We're not sure what happened to that food because it wasn't my client who ordered it. But about, yeah, it was like $1,000 almost in one day of Uber Eats. I don't know how anybody eats that much, but apparently Uber allowed it to happen. And that wasn't necessarily Uber on Uber, but it was on the banking institute because it was that person's checking account that they were using. Um, and then, gosh, I've got so many. I had one that was probably the most egregious to me. It was a credit card, two credit cards that the client never knew about, never had no idea, and was not checking her credit report regularly, so she wouldn't have known about these credit cards. But she lived in Northern California, and all the charges were in Southern California, and they racked up about $130,000 worth of charges over the course of 10 months. And they had this little Ponzi scheme where they would send out a check to pay off the last bill. That check would bounce, but they would get credit. So then that $10,000 limit turned into 20,000 because now they've racked up $20,000 worth of costs or charges, and tried to pay for 10 of that, and it didn't work out. So they kept doing that throughout the 10 months and racked up about 100 and I think it was 130, $135,000.
That it's amazing how enterprising some people can be with that. I would not have thought to do that, but I guess that's because I'm a law-abiding person.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's say Sarah, you and I are sitting down for a cup of coffee, and I'm like, hey, listen, I think someone has my information. I think I'm a victim of identity theft. What do I do? I don't even know where to start. What would you tell me?
Absolutely. If you're my friend, you've probably already checked your credit report plenty of times. But if you're not, and I'm meeting you for the first time, I'm going to ask you to check your credit reports. I'm going to say, go to the three bureaus, grab your credit reports either by paper or you can do it online. And take a look at those credit reports and see if there's anything on those credit reports that don't look familiar. Or in the case of my client, it looks familiar, but it's not your charges, right? So that's where I would start because your credit report really gives you an idea of what's happening on the credit side for you. The other thing is, I would ask you to put a freeze on all three of the credit bureaus. That way, if you are a victim of identity theft, let's say you pulled your credit reports, you definitely know that you're a victim of identity theft. If you put a freeze with all three of them, then nobody can open up any other accounts. They can still use the accounts that you have, or that they have technically, but they can't open up anything new, which usually mitigates any new damage that you have. The other thing I would tell you is contact your banking institutions and tell them that you are a victim of identity theft. So you want to call them up, say, hey, look, I'm a victim of identity theft. This isn't my account, or these aren't my charges. And then give them a very thorough explanation of what's happening. You also want to put that in writing. So you want to do the fraud affidavit. The Federal Trade Commission actually has a website. I would send you to that link and tell you to fill out that form, and then send that form to the bank that has that credit card or loan open. And then those things will usually help you in protecting against any new issues. Hopefully, the bank does what it's supposed to and takes a look at the account and says, "Yeah, absolutely, you live in San Francisco, and all these charges were over the course of 10 months in Riverside," and they do the right thing and actually negate that debt for you and say you're not responsible for it. They'll send you a letter, something in the mail. You always want to get it in writing that says you're not responsible for this debt. But that's where I would start.
That's a very robust process to go through. So thank you for sharing
It
that.
is.
Um, because it's going to hit so many avenues of stopping the bleeding and preventing future issues. So then, what point would you step in as as a lawyer and say, okay, now I need to get involved with this?
Mhm. So I actually have stepped in every step of the process. I've had people call me and say, I think I'm a victim, or I've had a data breach notice and I don't really know what to do with this. So I've stepped in at that point and we kind of monitored, we've done the freezes, we've made sure that nothing else happens. I've also come in where, that that poor client has been talking to the bank for months now, trying to get it all figured out, fixed, has sent letters to the credit bureaus, has sent letters to the furnisher, and nothing has gotten fixed. And so I'll step in at that point, make sure everything's done according to the statutes that are there for us to use. And if they are, then I file the lawsuit. But I'm happy to educate everybody about what's going on, how they can help themselves. If they do get a data breach letter, what to do to protect themselves, like the freezes, things like that. That so I can help at any step.
Nice. Yeah. And again, the couple of things you mentioned to do if you feel like you've been a victim of identity theft are super helpful. So I'm so glad you shared that. Also, I like to watch a lot of YouTube videos, and there's always ads for different things, and so there's all these ads for tools and resources to help you not be a victim of identity theft. How about you? Like, what do you recommend for tools and resources?
So I really like using the actual credit bureaus instead of using like a LifeLock or Credit Karma. Credit Karma is great for you to just kind of have an eye on it, but it's really not as efficient and as accurate as it should be. But if you're preparing yourself and pulling those credit reports, either, if you are a victim of identity theft, pulling them monthly, pulling them weekly, whatever it is, to make sure that you're doing what needs to be done. If you're not a victim of identity theft yet, I still would say you want to check your credit report maybe quarterly, just to make sure that everything that's on there is accurate as well. It's not just about the identity theft aspect of it. Sometimes the banks make mistakes and they put something on your credit report that says you're late, and you're not late. And you don't want to wait until you're buying that house or buying that car, and at that location and they're pulling your credit for you to find out about that. That's not where you want to be. So I would say, if you can pull your credit reports, you don't necessarily have to sign up for the programs that tell you or alert you. But if you want to pull your credit reports quarterly, I would say that that's probably the best thing to do.
Nice. And just as a reminder, maybe for me and also anyone listening, I believe there's three major credit bureaus. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are. Yes, it's TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian.
Yeah. And I believe they have to give you your report when you ask. I believe, is that correct as well?
They do. Ever since COVID, they've actually been giving at least one, I think, a week. Prior to that, it was one every 12 months that you could get for free. You could always ask them, and then you could pay a charge for it too. But I don't think they've changed it yet. I think my clients have been able to pull a credit report at least once a week for free if they wanted it.
Okay, that's good news. Yeah, because the last I knew about it was a year, but it sounds like potentially it's a little bit of a better deal now. So that's wonderful. So let's talk about when you do get involved with a case, and what that might look like. So part of it is going to be the recovery process. So can you just elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what does the recovery process look like? What role does your firm play? And what kind of challenges go along with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as far as filing the lawsuit, and once you've come to our office and said, "Yeah, I am a victim of identity theft, and I've done X, Y, and Z as far as getting information to the bureaus, they're just not listening, or the furniture's not listening," then we step in, we get all of your information, we make sure that everything is correct, accurate, that you provided what information you need to provide to the bureaus, and then if everything checks out, we file a lawsuit. Typically, we do these on contingency, meaning that there's no upfront fees or costs. And if we win, then we get our fees paid for by the other side, by the defendants. And then as far as recovery, I mean, the lawsuits, I won't lie, they typically take a minute for us to go through the process, mostly because we've got to get it filed and then we've got to get it served. They have to have an opportunity to respond to it. Sometimes we can discuss settlement pretty early on. Sometimes they don't want to discuss settlement. So we go through the process of discovery. We get their documents on what they did or what they didn't do. They may ask you questions. They may ask, for a deposition of you, if you, so that they can get an idea of what your damages are. A lot of times with these kinds of cases, especially identity theft, somebody stole your identity. So they stole a piece of you almost, right? They've used your information and you kind of feel betrayed in a way. And then you're asking for these companies to help you out and make that right. And when they don't, you get really frustrated. And every time it could be like you're getting almost re-victimized, or going through that process all over again, and you just want to get this done with. So that leads to a lot of our clients having like sleepless nights, stress. Sometimes we have a lot of military clients too, and it can mess with their security clearance. And so we go through all of that. We talk about it. That's all part of the recovery process too, as far as what damages they can get from the lawsuit. But yeah, we're pretty extensive in kind of figuring out what those damages are.
Yeah, boy, and such a good answer, because I never thought about the fact that it is theft and there is trauma involved, and there are these other unintended consequences that happen. And so to have someone like you who can come alongside and work through all those is such an amazing gift to be able to have and take advantage of. Yeah. But I do have to say, along with that, and I think you would agree with me, it's a whole lot better to just not have your identity stolen in the first place.
Yes, yes.
And of course, that's the goal. It's not entirely something we can control 100%, but there are things we can do to maybe mitigate that risk to some degree. So, like, what advice would you give someone, whether it's an individual or a business, to stop that identity theft before it occurs?
In this day and age, especially with technology, it's a little bit harder. I would have maybe had different advice for you a few years ago or a decade ago, but you want to make sure that your passwords are protected. You want to make sure your passwords are hard to figure out. You want to make sure that you're really diligent as far as like your banking institutes and your credit cards. If you have a bank that calls you, that's probably not correct, right? They may send you a text message and say, "Hey, this charge came on. Is it you? Is it fraud?" If you don't feel good about it, don't call the number on that text. Go to their website and call the number on their website to make sure that you're getting the actual bank. Or even better, go in. I mean, they're bored at the branches. Go visit them, say hello, show your face. And then I also feel like I mentioned before, you want to check those credit reports. A lot of people don't, and I don't know if it's because they're afraid to, they're worried about it, they just don't have the time. But your credit, especially here in the US, if you think about it, that's how you get your house, that's how you get your car, that's how you get your student loans. It's how we kind of move forward. A lot of countries are cash basis, and so you have to have the cash to be able to buy the house, the car, or whatever it is that you want. In the United States, we're a little bit, I guess, blessed in a way where we don't necessarily have to have all of that up front. We can pay it off over time, but your credit is probably one of the most important things that navigates that, right? That allows you to navigate that. And so I would say check those credit reports. You could put those freezes, even if you're not a victim of identity theft, put those on. And then just remember when you go to actually apply for something to take that freeze off so that you can apply for something. Because if it's doing its job properly, it'll stop you from doing that. And then, like I mentioned, if you get like a letter from, I think about a year ago, I got a letter from Ticketmaster saying your information has potentially been breached or leaked. If that's the case, then you do want to go back and look at all of your passwords, change those passwords, keep a diligent eye out for what's going on. Check your mail. Some people don't realize that they'll actually take mail. If your mail is outside, make sure you're bringing it in. Make sure it's locked, some way protected, so that they don't have the opportunity to take your cards or information about your credit cards and your driver's license, things like that. I could go on for days, honestly, but I would say those are probably my key points.
Yeah, and those are all really good tips. Just good basic, internet safety and data security tips. So thank you so much for those. Yeah. And Sarah, it's just been super wonderful to talk with you today and learn a little bit about the super important subjects. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And to our listeners, thank you too for joining us on Navigating Consumer and Family Law Challenges, Insights from SoCal's Trusted Attorney with Sara Khosroabadi. To connect with her firm, visit knhlawgroup.com. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. And with that, have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.